Good evening and welcome to the Georgia Public Policy Foundation Annual Dinner, celebrating 23 years of changing Georgia policy and changing the lives of Georgians. Our work is made possible because of your support. Thank you. Please welcome Mr. David Allman, this evening's MC and member of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation Board of Directors since 1993.
Welcome. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, it is my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. The mission of GPPF is to improve the lives of Georgians through sound public policy that enhances economic opportunity, and we support free market solutions to promote such policies. Tonight, we'll hear some stories from individuals whose lives manifest the strength and wisdom of those principles and policies. And now I would like to have our Commissioner of Agriculture for the state of Georgia, Gary Black, to come forward and sing for us the national anthem. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming? And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our senior fellow, Ross Mason, to give our invocation.
Father, your word says that if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear their cries from heaven and forgive their sins and heal their land. Lord, we ask that you heal our land. Forgive us for turning away from you. Help us to live lives of righteousness, lives that seek justice, that love mercy, and that walk humbly before you. Father, in your word, we see men and women that live bold and courageous lives that were testimonies to us throughout history of integrity. And we pray for that for our men and women in elected office. And we pray that for the men and women of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation. Father, Pharaoh had a title. Moses had a testimony. Jezebel had a title. Elijah had the testimony. Nebuchadnezzar had the title. Daniel had the testimony. And Pilate had a title. But our Lord Jesus had the testimony. Lord, thank you for our men and women who have fought and died for our freedom and liberty all over the world. They've lost limbs, they've lost families, they've lost their mental, emotional, and physical health. Thank you for their courage. Give us men and women in elected office who have the courage to lay down that office for the future of our children and grandchildren, that we can once again be one nation under God, who's with men and women who stand and fight not just in the military, but in positions of responsibility and authority to honor your name and to proclaim and live your gospel, not just with their mouths, not just with their heads, not just with their hearts, but with their hands. Father, to boldly serve you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Last year, the world lost a giant, and many of us in this room lost a good friend. We are all here gathered tonight because of the vision, and the leadership and the generosity of one man, and that man is Hank McCamish. And I can't think of a better person to pay tribute and honor the memory of Hank McCamish than a member of our Board of Trustees, Gordon Beckham. Gordon?
Thank you, Kelly. And I'd like to just reiterate our appreciation for all of you being here tonight. You have very busy lives and you have families to tend to, and we appreciate you taking time out of that to be here tonight. It's indeed an honor for me to have the opportunity to say a few words about my dad, Hank McCamish, founder of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, an extraordinary father and role model, a loving husband, a proud grandfather, legendary insurance executive, a man of ironclad faith, and a generous philanthropist. He married my mother when I was 7 years old. What a blessing for her and me. He was truly an incredible man, one of those larger-than-life individuals whose mere presence transformed the nature of any gathering, whether it's a business function or a social function. And let me be crystal clear. His was a presence of quiet gravitas, not self-promotional fanfare. I could speak at length on any of the human dimensions just mentioned, but in light of tonight's program, let me speak a little bit about the American dream and his place in it. Just to level set, by American dream, I mean that national ethos of the United States of America, that belief in and respect for a set of noble ideas in which freedom includes the opportunity for prosperity, success, and upward social mobility, achieved through hard work, not circumstances of birth or social class. The opportunity for prosperity, not a guarantee, through hard work, not a handout. Dad was born on November the 11th, 1928 in Greenville, South Carolina, the youngest of 3 children. His parents, while long on love, did not possess high school diplomas. The family moved to Greenwood, South Carolina in 1938, where his dad worked in a textile mill as a laborer, not a manager. The population of Greenwood County in 1940 was approximately 40,000 people. The town of Greenwood, half that size. Dad went to the only high school in Greenwood, Greenwood High. Not quite the caliber of Westminster, Lovett, Pace, or any other blue blood prep schools of Atlanta. From a worldly, material perspective, he came from nothing. And I believe it was precisely this void that drove his work ethic, which was indomitable. From Greenwood, South Carolina, and Greenwood High School, he somehow ended up in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. We don't know how. But unlike me or my contemporaries, or my children and theirs, his parents could not afford college, so he had to work to earn the privilege to go to college. Before football games at Grant Field, he handed out cigarette samples to fraternity boys and sorority girls. During the games, he sold programs. His first job out of college was as a floor covering salesman. The state of Georgia was his territory. His responsibility was to build a book of business by calling on hardware and building supply stores. No one worked harder than Dad. At some point, his book of business was sufficiently developed that he began to earn a respectable stream of commissions. His boss, however, determined he was making too much money and cut the size of his territory. I recall Dad telling me that he quit and why, saying no one was going to limit his success or the amount of money he could earn. He quit selling linoleum and started selling life insurance for Mass Mutual in the mid-1950s. Before his 10th anniversary with the company, he had been named their Man of the Year twice. In relatively short order, his life insurance clients graduated in complexity and size from individuals like you and me to closely held corporations to Fortune 100 conglomerates. When the most sophisticated purchasers of life insurance contracts demanded uniquely priced and designed products commensurate with their purchasing power, Dad quit his lucrative brokerage business in the mid-1980s when he was 57 years old to form a company solely focused on servicing the needs of the large corporate buyer. He conceived and designed the products. He built the administration platform. He created the service model. And he built the distribution platform. In a matter of 5 years, this startup had generated in excess of $1.8 billion of annual recurring premium and over $40 billion of face amount. A stunning and unprecedented success in the life insurance industry, all of which led to generous support of established and greenfield charities and public policy initiatives like the Georgia Public Policy Foundation. But getting back to the American dream, he achieved his prosperity individually by leveraging his brains, his work ethic, and the attributes of a free market society. Contrary to the worldview of certain contemporary politicians, he did, in fact, build his business. The government was not his partner. Nothing was given to him, nor did he feel entitled to gifts. He didn't have a dad with money, connections, or a family business. He did it the old-fashioned way, pioneering new territory on his own, fortified by a relentless determination to succeed. Therein lies the greatness of the American dream in America. A boy from nowhere, USA, with no means, comes to the big city and makes it big, all facilitated by the noble ideals referenced earlier. A society built on individual liberty, free enterprise, and limited government. Unfortunately, these ideals are under insidious attack all across our nation. We are being coerced to buy stuff we don't want. Our businesses are being burdened by job-killing rules and regulations, and government is larger and more intrusive than it has ever been. We are in danger of losing what made this country great. We have a couple of options. We can bitch, moan, complain about the direction of the country and sit back and do nothing. Or we can do something. One thing that I will continue to do is support the Georgia Public Policy Foundation with my money and my time. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Gordon. You know, Hank really did live the American dream. And I truly believe one of the reasons that he created the Georgia Public Policy Foundation is because he wanted your children and grandchildren to have that same opportunity that he had. And in order to do that, we have to defend those principles. That's hard work, and they are under attack. What we have to do as we fight those battle of ideas is we've got to engage people personally. Just having the facts and having good ideas on these lofty principles works in this crowd, but it doesn't work in the real world. We've got to engage with average Americans so they understand how our ideas are going to benefit their lives and their families. That is our challenge. And often the best way to do that is to tell stories. Let individuals tell their stories and let them be the examples for how our ideas can work. We have 4 individuals that are going to come up and tell you their story tonight. Talk about how we're trying to engage with young people and others and to give you examples of the free enterprise system and the American dream. The very first is a student at Georgia Tech, much like Hank was many years ago. Please welcome Anish Joseph.
right, well, thanks, Kelly, for that introduction. It's an honor to be here. Like you said, my name is Anish Joseph. I'm currently an undergraduate biomedical engineer at Georgia Tech. And I'm going to talk briefly about how outreach or opportunities like today and opportunities through the Student Outreach Program provided by the Georgia Public Policy Foundation enrich my education. For those of you who don't know, biomedical engineering is basically applying concepts of engineering to medicine and biological systems. So basically, we're the ones who make stents, pacemakers, prosthetics, any sort of device or technology that interfaces with the body. Because of the nature of the problems we face, our curriculum develops a unique skill set across all of the engineering disciplines. We learn how to apply principles, for example, from mechanical, electrical, and chemical engineering, along with computer science and mathematics. And we aren't just educated to integrate these principles, but we're also educated to learn through what's called problem-based learning. The goal of problem-based learning is not only to find a solution, but also to figure out how to find a solution. In addressing a solution, when we are presented with a problem, we're trained to focus on working with groups, identify what we already know, what we need to know, and how and where to access new information that may lead us to a solution to the problem. So basically what this turns us into are it's basically like a liberal arts degree in engineering. And through the process of receiving our education, we become jacks of all trades, and effectively, this makes us really good at thinking both in terms of little details and also big picture, in terms of the big picture. Today, problems that we're presented with are scientifically, psychologically, and socially complex, and problem-based learning kind of provides an avenue for students to become inspired to innovate, create constraints, or be creative within constraints, and build a solid yet diverse foundation of knowledge. However, the one thing that's missing from our curriculum in education today is the actual application of what we're learning to real people with real problems. This is where working with people like Ross Mason and coming to events like this play an integral role. Working over the last couple of years on projects with hospitals, businesses, and lawmakers kind of added the human element to my engineering skills. Coming from a place of naivety and neutrality as a student, it really actually shocked me to see how divorced at certain times the worlds of academia, policy, and industry could be. Oftentimes, more than not, as researchers, we aren't educated to think about the ethical implications of our new technologies. Policymakers many times fail to keep up with the pace at which technology advances due to a lack of appropriate organizational structures. And industry leaders become preoccupied with the immediate returns on investment versus the long-term implications of their actions. As a student, I had the unique opportunity to observe and learn from the nature of problem solving across these three worlds. And it's really the combination of these experiences plus my education that's equipped me to solve future challenges. Opportunities like today where students are mentored and allowed to explore their options freely make all the difference. And I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity that Ross provided me, both in his personal time and through the Student Outreach Program. Thank you.
Every great life begins with a great education. That is why Georgia's innovative tax credit scholarship program is such an important part of the future for every Georgia family. Since 2008, the Georgia Gold Scholarship Program has awarded financial assistance grants to 6,615 students who attend 122 schools in every section of our state. Please welcome Miss Lisa Kelly, co-founder and president of the Georgia Gold Scholarship Program.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Georgia Public Policy Foundation, for allowing me to speak just briefly tonight about how I work in an area that's all about opportunity and all about the attainment of the American dream. I was born in Georgia and have lived in Georgia all my life, and I count that among my blessings. After graduating from the University of Georgia, came to Atlanta, became a CPA, worked for 25 years, really more than 25 years, in the for-profit sector. I love business, and I love, like any good conservative, I love profits, and I had never really felt drawn to the nonprofit world or to a particular cause, but somewhere along the way that changed. My husband Jim and I have raised two daughters who now are thankfully in their 20s and both employed. But during the years when they were in primary and secondary schools, we, like parents everywhere, had to navigate the increasingly complex and sometimes troubling world of K through 12 education. After several years in public schools, we actually moved our daughters to private schools, private Christian schools. We worked and they graduated from those schools. We worked like crazy to pay the tuition, and it was a definite sacrifice. We were always so incredibly grateful that we could select what we felt were the absolute best schools for our daughters. And to this day, I have tremendous peace of mind and heart to know that they were educated in a strong academic, disciplined environment that also affirmed and strengthened their faith. Now today, I am privileged to be leading the largest nonprofit organization in Georgia that works to provide educational choice to low and middle income families, to provide them with that same sense of peace about the education of their children. This is only possible because in 2008, Georgia's elected officials enacted the Education Expense Tax Credit Law. This law allows Georgia taxpayers to make contributions to student scholarship organizations, and in exchange for those contributions, they receive a 100% Georgia income tax credit. The student scholarship organizations, of which Georgia Goal is the largest, must use those funds to provide scholarships to students moving from public schools into the private schools of their parents' choice. The opportunities abound with every participant in the program. The children are able to attend schools that are academically challenging, disciplined, and safe. The parents are able to select the school that best meets the needs of their child. The thousands of Georgia taxpayers are able to actually make a difference in someone's life, to invest in an educational opportunity in Georgia. And even the private schools are able to reach out and bring in students from a variety of socioeconomic and racial and ethnic backgrounds. In fact, since 2008, the Georgia Gold Program alone has 7,000 students on scholarship, and of those families, all those families, the average income adjusted for family size is $25,500, and 36% of the scholarships are going to minority students. We just cannot thank you enough, everyone here who has been a participant in this program, who has made a contribution to this program and helped this thing succeed. Since 2008, we have received 36,000 contributions for more than $88 million. And that is just about a third of the amount statewide, because there are other organizations like us. Thank you also, this is very important, to the Georgia legislators who have supported this law. It is truly your vision, creativity, and courage that gave birth to the best tuition tax credit law in the country. And following our earlier speaker, I would be remiss not to thank Hank McCamish as well, because in addition to the many other things he did, he actually took $1 million of his own money and started the first scholarship program in Georgia that was about providing low-income families with access to private schools for their K-8 children. In closing, I want to share a testimonial of a goal recipient named Austin Mulligan from Savannah, Georgia, because I think what he says expresses so well the gratitude and the hopes shared by thousands of Georgia students and families who are receiving this scholarship. The Gold Scholarship is more than just a scholarship. It is an opportunity. I was the proudest person alive knowing that I was given an opportunity not based on how wealthy my family might be, but on who I am as a person. This is my chance to show the world and myself what I can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Atlanta is blessed to have many outstanding residential developers, but one among them is very special. Columbia Residential, founded by Noel Khalil, has developed thousands of housing units for low-income Atlanta families since 1991. Columbia also helped revitalize New Orleans housing after Hurricane Katrina's widespread devastation. Please welcome Mr. Noel Khalil, founder, chairman, and CEO of Atlanta's Columbia Residential.
evening. I would like to express my thanks to Kelly McCutcheon and to Benita Dodd for inviting me to this special event. And I would like to say to you that I am honored to be here among such celebrated individuals. I've just been very impressed with the people I've been meeting here. But there's one person I sat down at the table with who I found rather absolutely fascinating. His name is Melvin Emerson. And Melvin is with the Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity. And he was talking to me, and I said to him, well, you know, I'm in the housing business, and I have like 252 employees. And I said, I just got a letter from your department about one of my employees. And I said to him, now, I want to talk about protected classes. I said, I know that being black is a protected class, being woman is a protected class, but what about people like me that are ugly? Are we a protected class? Well, I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to take you on a little journey. Journey from a place called Jamaica. Jamaica, West Indies. Many of you all have visited it. And if you visited it, you think it's a beautiful, beautiful island. Topographically rich, with great flora, just an incredibly beautiful place. Well, there was a huge brain drain in the 1940s and the 1950s in Jamaica. And my parents were part of that brain drain. Highly motivated individuals who wanted opportunity had to leave that absolutely beautiful island. Now, I mean, America is a very beautiful country, very prodigiously beautiful. But Jamaica is prodigiously beautiful. But they didn't come to America to participate in the prodigious beauty of America. They came to America to participate in the prodigious opportunities of America. So they came here in the late 1940s. And what was fascinating about their timing is that the economic engine of America was full of energy, allowing individuals who would work hard to gain the benefit of their hard work. My father came here and got a job as a truck driver. My mother came here and got a job as what they call a key puncher. Today you would call them a data entry clerk. And they worked hard. In all of my life, watching my father get up, he'd get up 5 o'clock in the morning. I cannot remember one day of my childhood in my house that my father didn't get up and go to work, despite the fact that we lived in New York City and there were some horrendous storms, but every day he got up and went to work. That was the example that he set. He was a silent man, but he set his example through his action. My mother was very ambitious. In fact, I got to tell you a story about my mother and my dad. We lived in the Bronx. We bought into the best neighborhood we could afford to buy it, a townhouse. You call them townhouses here. In New York, we call them row houses. And my mother saw an opportunity to move to White Plains. So just so you all know, White Plains is like Buckhead. And my mother said, let's go and buy this house. It's going to be $33,000. And my father said, well, what if I get laid off? Well, till my father died, my mother harassed him about not letting her buy that house because that house would have been worth like $750,000 when they moved to Florida. I had very unique parents. They raised 3 children, and they taught us the value of work and the value of being responsible. My mother, there was a United States Senator, Phil Gramm, and I wasn't a huge fan of Phil Gramm, but he said something that really touched me. He said he lived in a day when a mother's dreams were not easily deferred. And I lived in the day when a mother's dreams were not easily deferred. My mother let me know it wasn't an issue of whether I was going to college. It was where you're going to go to college. Those were the value systems. And that was achieved by them setting standards for everybody in our house. And nowhere was there a regulation from the United States government. They didn't come to the United States looking for government assistance. They came to the United States looking for opportunity. So what did my mother do? She got a second job, selling real estate in Florida for IT&T in a community called Palm Coast, Florida. She went ahead and sold New Yorkers, primarily immigrants, lots in Florida. She'd have a little picture. She'd go show the picture on the wall of what the lots would and what the community was going to look like. And she did that second job. When my mother and father finally got to a point where they could no longer fend for themselves and had to move in with me, I finally found out what their financial statement looked like. And to my amazement, mother and father had a liquidity of $1.2 million. This is a person who was a father with a sixth grade education and a mother who got her high school diploma at night in New York City. How did that get achieved? It didn't get achieved by government assistance. It got achieved because there was an environment that rewarded people who would work hard and would make a sacrifice. So that translated into Noel, a set of values about going to work. And there's something else that Mr. Emerson's father said that touched me. He says, your reputation will go places that you will never visit. I never heard a quote like that, but it was something that my parents had said to me, but not so eloquently. So about 23 years ago, 30 years ago, I started doing work in the north side of Atlanta. And I was among mostly white developers. And they were fascinated. They'd go into a room with me and they'd be fascinated. And they would sit down and listen to me talk. In about 5 minutes, they relaxed themselves. Because they said, well, he knows what he's talking about. Made a lot of friends. And those friends told a guy named Herman Russell about me. And Herman Russell invited me to run his development company for 7 years. And we did that and had a successful venture. And then about 23 years ago, I started a small company called the Affordable Housing Partnership that has subsequently been renamed Columbia Residential. I grew that company from 1 employee to today with 252 employees, from 0 revenue to generating $45 million economic revenue annually. And that has occurred because the state of Georgia had an environment that didn't erect barriers to small business people, didn't create regulations that made it difficult for me to employ people. And I am forever indebted for that environment. Now, I knew about other environments. I knew about environments like New Jersey and New York that made it much more difficult for a small entrepreneur to build a company. So what I would like to say in my final comment is that I am hopeful that we all can come together. And I want to tell you, I'm just feeling so blessed, and unfortunately my mother and father are both in heaven right now, but I want to say this to you, that no, America's not perfect. Maybe 25% of the playing field is not available to me. I don't know. Some people say 10, say 15, some say 25. But I take 75% of the playing field of America any day of the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noel. Sonny Park has lived the American dream, but his dream began far, far away. Sonny was penniless when he arrived in the United States from South Korea in 1974. Today, he leads a diversified group of real estate investment and business service companies that operate throughout the United States. Sonny serves on many foundation and public sector boards of directors, and we are proud to say that he is a member of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation Board of Directors. Please welcome Mr. Sonny Park.
I came to the United States in 1974 to achieve my dream. My dream was, and is, clean more toilets. Americans eat a lot, they use the bathroom a lot, and my business will continue to grow. I'm a chief executive janitor of a general building maintenance company I founded in 1983. But way before that, I moved to the United States with a dream to achieve was have a freedom in my life and also pursuit of happiness. I was not really understand what pursuit happiness really mean. But I studied in middle school in Korea, Korean classroom. The Declaration Independence mentioned the pursuit of happiness of people, not the people who wrote that statement, which I thought pretty impressive. Later, I was more impressive when I heard Patrick Henry and said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Wow. Somebody will die for liberty over somebody else. That's something brave. Later, I also learned in the classroom in Korea, I was young, Abraham Lincoln Gettysburg Address. The government is for the government, for the people, of the people, by the people. Not in that exact order. There's a much different system was in Korea, but the politicians, I should say, statement, are looking after people's freedom and people's betterments, and this is the right place I want to live. But I still couldn't make a decision to come to the United States, the country way far away. I'm going to look like a forever foreigner, and I don't have much English skill. I still don't. And I was saying, no, it was a very hard decision to make. But I was so inspired by John F. Kennedy's inauguration address. It said, ask not, he was asking the American people, ask not what country can do for you, but what you can ask what you can do for your country. And I said, all those things are not free. And the government, the leader, is asking the people, American people, to do something to earn. This is the right place. I wanted to come. September 5, 1974, I landed in Chicago Airport and then changed a flight to Indianapolis. I landed there. And then, same day, I got there about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. About 6 o'clock, that same day, I found a job. At 11 o'clock that night, I start work. I was making $1.80 an hour. I just left the country 24 hours ago. The country was people making $2 a day. This is paradise. And I knew I'm going to make it good here. And I set my goal. I write down what I want to be in this country. And I'm proud to say, those goals I wanted to reach, I'm achieved it. I'm an achiever of the American dream. When I see that the pamphlet, the program, I said, I'm one of the American dreamer. No, I'm not dreamer anymore. I'm an achiever of that dream. And then, so what? It is your dream, good for you. No, it's got to be good for somebody else. Patrick Henry was not saying that give me death or give me liberty or give me death. He didn't say that for himself. I got to learn something. Abraham Lincoln didn't say anything for himself. John F. Kennedy was not mentioning for himself. So, my achievement in this country has got to be devoted for right thing for this country. So first thing I did, actually third week of this country that I got here, and I made a goal. I say, I'm going to be valuable American. I'm going to be somebody special for this country. So I set a goal, and one day, in my lifetime in the United States, I will pay $1 million annual income tax. And that's what I want to be. And I'll achieve that. Somebody will say you're stupid. But seriously, I didn't want, as an immigrant, this country was not born as rich or prosperous. It's somebody, the founding fathers, you can name it all people. The good people, good hardworking people made what it is today, America. I don't want to jump in the middle of it and just take it. No, my life is more precious than that. God never gave me the life to just go around and pick up something free. No, I want to pay back. I want to be somebody special for this country and somebody special for the history of this country. There's so many things I'd like to talk about. A lot of times, unfortunately, I'm thinking this was land of opportunity and still is a land of opportunity and still the best country, best place on earth to make a quality life. However, would it be this country would be same as today in 50 years or 100 years? Would 100 years later still be millions of people from foreign country want to come here in this country and live here? I hope so. A lot of times, I doubt. Unfortunately, hope I'm wrong. The problem is we are having issues with education. We're having issues with the mindset of people. There are too many people looking for free stuff. I'm talking about including my own kids. The mindset goes, somebody else is going to help me. Help me? No, they demand now. So I ask my fellow, I don't want to sound like a lecturing here, but remind yourself, I don't want any American give up the pride of an individual and then start treating this country like renting. We need to treat this country as the owner of this country. What do you do when you own a house? In the middle of the night, the rain starts falling, and your roof starts leaking. What are you going to do? No matter what, you get out, go up to the rooftop, start fixing. Pitchy dark, rain pouring, you're still going to fix it. You're not going to come down to the roof until you fix. Are we doing it? When come to community, and I'm proud to say, and I'm qualified to say this to my fellow friends and Americans, are we really, really treating this country like my country or somebody else's country, but I'm there to hang around? You know, as a man paying $1 million income tax a year, I threw a lot. We clean about 470 million square feet of space. Every night, my staff members clean 3 million toilets. Right now, it's happening. We're in the business in 18 different major cities. Last week, we're in snow removal business in Virginia and all the 5 different states. Just chemical alone, we purchased one storm. We just purchased $1.8 million chemicals worth of $1.8 million, almost $2 million worth of. So what I'm saying is, I got big business running. But this American dream, I want to be. But once I achieve the goal, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to eat 4 meals a day? Or wear 2 ties? Or three jackets? I have a pretty good life. I have a pretty nice car and house, but there's a limit of it. This country should be better than the day I got here. So I'm leaving this podium with asking my fellow friends, This country got to wake up. There's a 40% of high school kids dropping out. That's almost half of them. Is it your problem or somebody else's problem? It may be not my problem, our problem, but our kids and grandkids' problem. That's for sure. We're all smart people. We can figure that out. So high school dropout is our problem and your problem. We need to fix it. How we fix it? Worry about it. We're smart enough people to find a solution for it. We cannot sit here and depend on government. Georgia Public Policy Foundation is right there, working out. Get the policy out, but we gotta act. The policy alone, what's the good? But we gotta take action. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you.
I think that standing ovation is for everyone. Thank you, Sonny. Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Lisa and Anish. Inspiring stories. It's my honor to introduce our last speaker. That's Larry Reed. He is the president and CEO of the Foundation for Economic Education, which is among the oldest and the most respected free market institutions in our country. Before that, he was president of the Mackinac Institute, the granddaddy of the state think tanks. Fee does an incredible job in engaging young people, high school students and college students, which is exactly what we're talking about, reaching out to young people, explaining to them what the free enterprise system is all about. Please help me welcome Larry Reed.
At both GPPF and at Fee, where our focus is on teaching young people about liberty, free enterprise, and character, we know full well that even the best research and facts are of little use if we don't connect and engage with people, especially those with sincere hearts, open minds, and great potential. What GPPF does with policymakers, what Fee is doing for young adults, and what the LIBRE Initiative is doing for the Hispanic community all comes down to this: inspiring, educating, and connecting the leaders of today and tomorrow with ideas that make for a free, prosperous, and peaceful future. Now, the other Daniel Garza plays tennis, but there's so much more to the one we have here tonight. He has worked on the staff of a congressman from an early age. He was an elected city councilman in the state of Washington. He served in the Federal Department of the Interior and in the White House. In 2006, he became president of Televisa's Hispanic Poder Group, overseeing editorial, commercial, and promotion of publications, and shortly thereafter joined Univision to host and co-produce a weekly Spanish-language news talk show covering the issues impacting the U.S. Hispanic community. Born in the Central Valley of California, Daniel migrated with his family annually from their hometown in Mexico through California, Nebraska, and Washington State following the crop season as farm workers. From firsthand experience, he knows the trials and tribulations of good people trying to better themselves by following the American dream, often against the headwinds of bad policy. As executive director of the LIBRE Initiative, Daniel Garza devotes himself to reminding all people of the promise of liberty and self-reliance that gave birth to America and that sadly too many Americans have forgotten or now take for granted. Well, you've heard several inspiring stories tonight. Get ready for one more. This is the story of Daniel Garza.
My name is Daniel Garza, and my American experience started off here. I grew up picking crops with my family. My parents were immigrants from Mexico with nothing but a 4th grade education. We were so poor. My siblings and I would often miss school to work in the fields. Our home was the size of a tool shed. Had no running water, and what we would do is warm buckets of water on the stove so that when my parents returned from work in the fields, they would bathe with small cups. My father never took welfare because he didn't want to depend on anyone or lose his dignity. He is a proud and noble man.
We can make it with just three things. It's God, good credit, and freedom, liberty to work. And that's what the United States is.
You know, I didn't know it at the time, but my father began saving money and buying and selling small properties. He bought a motel with the profit he made. My family and I spent long hours fixing up that motel while still working the fields. My father continued to buy and sell property, and one day he and my mother retired with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their lives.
If I don't come to the United States, I don't think I have the life that we got right now. Living so good, you know.
My parents' American dream had become a reality. My family and I have succeeded by following the path to freedom. But that path is on the verge of vanishing. What we're starting to see here in America now is a growth in the size and the scope of government that is now starting to look like the governments that we left behind. I'm just torn apart when I see folks who are caught in this dependency that government offers. And not only that, they've condemned their children to a life of mediocrity and subsistence. That this is not the American dream. This is an American nightmare. The LIBRE Initiative is reaching the Hispanic community before they are lost forever. We know advancing economic freedom is the best way to improve human well-being, especially those at the bottom. And that's our message to the world. You know, one day I was speaking before a group of 150 evangelical Hispanic ministers in South Texas, and a man stood up. He had tears in his eyes and said, you know, I've never heard these things before. Why has nobody told us? And most Hispanics have never even heard about economic freedom, but they know it. Cuba, Venezuela, Mexico, Hispanics leave countries that have been ruined by tyranny to come to America, the land of the free. They don't just believe in the cause, they've lived it. It is a privilege to live in the United States because this is a nation where you dictate your destiny. No other nation has fulfilled more dreams and more aspirations than this country. And to have been born here, I'm just grateful to God for that. Learn how you can get involved at joinlibre.org.
My parents saw America, I think like a lot of immigrants did before them, as the promised land. And I like to quote a song by Woody Guthrie that he wrote about the Joad family in the novel, The Grapes of Wrath. And he's talking about the family that had come into California, and he said, and they came to the mountaintop, and it looked like the promised land, a rich green valley with a river running through it. There was work for every single hand, they thought. There was work for every single hand. And my parents, when they married, came to America, and they saw America like that. I mean, it really was rich and prosperous. And they knew that they could make, you know, they could improve their lot in life, not only for themselves, but for their children. And they were absolutely right. It was, to quote another author, the best of times and the worst of times, we came as farm workers. And so it was a real hard life. It was the best of times because we were always with family. And I had parents who loved each other. And so we always had that stability in the family. And my parents were, you know, they went as far as the 4th grade because that's all their little rural town in Mexico would allow for. But they were just good, decent people. Christian, you know, ethics, the Protestant work ethic and that whole thing. And I learned so much from my parents. It was the worst of times because, well, being a farm worker, it's hard work and it doesn't pay much. And you're running from, you know, place to place. And we'd migrate from California to Nebraska and Washington State, like the video says, you know, following the crop season. And the treatment that you get is not the best. Sometimes it's actually pretty painful. I remember on one occasion, we were working the fields, the hop fields in the city of Sunnyside, Washington. Dad had been working there for about a week, and Adam and I, my older brother and I, would often miss school to help out Dad. Times were tough, and that's just the way it was. And so, if you look at my school transcript, it was like a checkerboard. I was just gone a lot because of work. And in this particular occasion, it was during the fall season, and it wasn't, during the vine season, whereas more in the spring, where you get your beer from. This is when you take out the roots from the ground and you make medicines and different kind of things from. And what it was is that somebody takes a shovel, shoves it into the ground, and then the big chunk of roots that comes out, and you cut those roots into 6-inch little stalks, and then you put it into a bundle of 100. And then, depending on how many bundles you make at the end of the day, well, that's how much you get paid. So it was contract work is what it was called. And I remember during the lunch hour, one of the guys from the crew that had been there longer than Dad had come over to where we were. And the guy said, fíjese, don Adán, le queremos pedir que si por favor le puede pedir un aumento en el salario al patrón. Basically said, don Adán, if you could ask the boss for a raise. Muchachos, he goes, I don't know. I've just started. I don't want to rock the boat. You're asking too much. He goes, well, look, you're the only one who speaks English. We heard you guys. They're having a conversation in Spanish. I don't know. He says, well, no, he's the worst paying, boss in the whole area, and we just feel that, you could convince him if you could give him 5 cents more a bundle. Worked out to about $5 more a day. And Dad, he's just that kind of guy, and he relented. And he says, well, if I don't ask, then nobody else is going to do it. So Dad said yes, and Dad and Adam and I jumped into the car, and we went over to the boss's house. It was about a half mile away. And I remember Dad got out of the car, and Adam and I got out of the car because it was cold, and we were standing by the warm hood of the car, and Dad walked over about from here to that speaker where the front door was, and he knocked on the door, and big white man, answers the door, and he says, and he knew Dad. He says, "What can I do for you, Adam?" And Dad said, "Well, call him Mr. Jones." He says, "Well, look, Mr. Jones, you see the crew. Well, they sent me here, in his really broken English." And he says, "Well, they were wondering if you could, see to it if you could give them a 5-cent raise per bundle, because they're having a tough time paying the bills, and well, you're the boss who pays the least." And he took his little talking points, and I remember Mr. Jones paused for a while, and he took out a checkbook from his back pocket, and he said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you, Adam. I'm going to give those boys a raise." Remember thinking, and he says, "But I'm going to make you this check." He says, "I want you to take it and never, step on my property again." And I remember Dad taking the check, and he said, "Well, God bless you, Mr. Carpenter, Mr. Jones." And he walked back to the car, my dad, and didn't say anything, and he got back in the car, and we drove back to where the crew was, and he says, "Muchachos, fíjense que el patrón les va a dar el aumento, and the boss is going to give you the raise." And he says, "Yay, don Adán!" And they patted him on the back, and whatever, shook his hand and things. And he says, "But I got to go." He says, "I got another contract that is waiting for me, and it pays more." And he says, "Wait, where are you going?" He says, "No, one of those things." And so we jump in a car. And we, got in the car, and Adam and I were just looking at each other, and we didn't say it, but we knew it. And he says, "Dad just got fired." And we drove away. And frankly, I think instances like that could jade somebody over time when you pile on that many indignities when you have to see that happen to your father or your family members or whatever. And it could really, I think, lend to folks using it as an excuse, as a crutch later in life, and says, "Well, the man's got me down," or it's rigged against us, and this whole thing. And Or, you can do what my father did. You just get back up and you keep doing, because Dad had a vision. It's like the folks that were just talking, they're just so inspiring. You can tell they have a vision. And they start off with, something about them that is so resilient, and something about the human spirit that, it has that kind of, you get knocked down and you get back up and you just go. And nothing's going to stop you from achieving what you set out to do. And my father was like that. And he did. He saved money. He worked hard. I saw him work hard, him and Mom. And they borrowed money from their family members, and they leveraged themselves like you can't believe, and risked it on a small business. But it was that business that we were on our way. We were on our way once it paid off, and it was accessing, the free market, the American dream. And I tell you, I look back, about those tough times, and it's those tough times, actually, that drive me, that motivate me. Because, we're all going to have our challenges. They're going to be different from mine or from my father's or whatever. But, it's like, the folks here at the Georgia Public Policy Foundation were saying, you got to tell your story, because that's what moves people. And people need to identify with you. And sometimes the messenger is just as important as the message. Yeah, he knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, he gets it, that kind of thing. And so, we go out there at the LIBRE Initiative and we tell our stories. There's 4 of these kind of videos, with 4 different personalities, and we speak to young, to the women, we speak to the business owner, and we speak to the faith community. And we talk to them in ways that they understand, in ways that they relate to, about the virtues of the free market. You see, Hispanics have not rejected free market principles. There's just been an absence of the conversation within our community. And until now, we're driving an unprecedented effort, at the size and the scale that we're doing it. We're in 8 states. We're going to be in 10 states by the end of the year. We're just thrilled with the kind of response that we're getting from the Hispanic community, as I knew we would. And so I want to get into the little scripted piece of my remarks, and then I want to talk a little bit about how we're doing that engagement, how we're doing that outreach, because it's so important that we do it here in Georgia. Hispanic community here is growing, and the Hispanic community is what it is. It's not what you want it to be, and so we have to understand, what we have to work with. The famous phrase in our Declaration of Independence is categorically free market, that we are endowed with certain inalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, and that pursuit of happiness that we were just talking about a little bit ago. The pursuit of happiness, that is the founding fathers were in a very true sense declaring, we don't know what does it for you. You figure it out. You figure out what makes you happy. You work hard, you save, risk your capital, make profit, and then pursue your aims, your goals, your aspirations, not those of another, as was eloquently said before me, the speaker. And one need take inventory of our almost innumerable innovations and inventions, unequaled growth and wealth, and technological advances to understand how American individualism, that is, our free enterprise system, has been remarkable in its capacity to expand and advance human possibility. Through the free market, we've discovered that a free human has the God-given ability to create wealth, to control his destiny, and anticipate what life may bring through the sufficiency and the accumulation of capital. That freedom explains why some people, even in difficult economic times, can move up the economic ladder despite assertions that they are among the most vulnerable. Just like waves and waves of poor immigrants did before us, people just like my parents. America was built on waves of poor immigrants who achieved the American dream. But lately, we have turned our backs on the free market system. The current administration argues that only by increasing taxes, expanding the army of federal bureaucrats, and spiking government spending will we see better days. Instead of sticking to the business of redistributing knowledge and opportunity, the government is now redistributing earned wealth from workers to non-workers on a grand scale via massive spending programs. Things like stimulus, bailouts, subsidies, earmarks, cronyism run rampant. At a time when American families are struggling just to make ends meet, only Washington seems to be thriving. At a time of fiscal uncertainty and malaise, government demands more taxes, even though we are earning less. Government seeks to increase the welfare rolls, even though taxpayers are working less. The government increases regulations on business, even though startup businesses have declined. At a time when American taxpayers have had to make sacrifices, politicians say we don't do enough to pay our fair share. And the thing is, when is Washington going to make badly needed sacrifices? And when is it going to look out for the interest of the taxpayer? When will we focus once again on growing economic opportunities in our private sector and return to our free market ways? Methodically and deliberately, government now permeates every aspect of our lives, usurping the role of the market, the family unit, and the church. Convinced that government can remedy every social ill under the sun, this administration has grown the size and the scope of government at levels without historical precedents. With only a meager 2% GDP growth rate and 8% unemployment average to show for it. The worst of it is this: federal spending is ultimately about power that shifts control away from the individual. Every increase in federal spending is an increase in federal power. Every increase in federal spending is a diminishment in individual liberty. Every new federal mandate makes us less free. Every new program and government rule or regulation is, in a very real sense, a politician's desire to modify the behavior of Americans and their way of life, to change culture. Robert Kennedy said, "Government by the consent of the people must be limited in its power to act against its people, so that there is no interference with the right to worship, no restriction for any man to become educated or seek opportunity to gain wealth and fortune. Denial of freedom will be fought against by the American electorate, for freedom is in our blood, it's in our heritage, and it is in our destiny." And the power of this statement is boundless, and its intent is clear in its construction. These words express an undeniable and unbreakable truth, that people of liberty, united in the cause of freedom, become the strongest force for improving human well-being and peaceful coexistence. Which is why the United States of America, more than ever before in our history since the founding, needs its people to rally in the defense of liberty, self-reliance, individualism, and our free market system. Once again, we are called to rise up and defend the liberties our founding fathers established, guided by the hand of God, those liberties which past and current generations have died defending in foreign battlefields. But Washington conservatives trying to appeal to Hispanic voters can be frustrating to watch because they're making it harder than it really should be. The frustration stems from the fact that conservatives can and should win this test every time. But time and again, they have failed to make an effective case to the Hispanic community. Having ceded outreach efforts of minority communities to progressive nonprofits, unions, and liberal candidates, their neglect has resulted in the loss of precious votes on a massive scale across the country. The fact that my community, the Hispanic community, has not been engaged at the level that they should be is our fault. The time to drive pro-liberty, free market agenda that makes deep inroads within the Hispanic community is now. And to that end, there are a number of things that the conservatives needs to do, starting now, which is what we're doing. And so I want to talk a little bit about that before I wrap it up. Our message about the principles and the virtues of the free market must be unapologetic. We must stand on those principles, not make them conservative light, or not, try to dismiss them. And it's like I said before, it's not that they reject them, they just don't hear them. Univision and Telemundo is not telling them about the free markets. Hispanic celebrities are not preaching free market principles. The National Council of La Raza and the League of United Latin America don't have workshops about the free market. We have to do that. Preaching beyond the choir is what we have to do. And we talked about segmentation. And we have to know what audience you're in front of. The fact is, pastors care about religious liberty issues and things like permitting and zoning and licensing and things that impact church growth. Let's talk to them about that. Youth care about inequality, the cost of their tuition. Let's talk to them about those things. And what are the free market alternatives? Women care about workplace advancement, the education of their children. Let's have that conversation, market-based. The business owner cares about regulations and taxes and how he's going to grow his business. Let's have that conversation. Businessman with businessman, conservative to conservative. We gain data on Hispanic electorate and identify and turn them out, the high affinity voters. We're just having a conversation about Texas. Texas, 27 million people, 9.5 million are Hispanic. 20% of the Hispanic population reside in Texas. Only half of them are registered to vote, and only 38% of them turned out to vote. That's why Battleground Texas is going into Texas to try to register them and then turn them out at 62%, which is what they've done in Florida. If they can register more Hispanics and turn them out at a 62% clip like they have in Florida, Texas turns blue, unless we engage. You have to challenge the narrative. They've been told that you don't care, that all you care about is the rich. We have to tell our story. We have over 500 donors that give to us, each one of them self-made. Over 80% of American millionaires are self-made. They had nothing, and it was the free market system that made them prosperous. They need to tell their stories. There are no Hispanic issues. It's not just immigration. It's about the debt. It's about defense. It's about education. It's about transportation issues. It's all of it. If you're somebody who's running for an office, earn their vote, respect them, talk to them about all the issues that are impacting your community. Go into their churches, the Chamber of Commerces, and the colleges and universities. Have those conversations with them. Do not pander. I don't know how to say this without sounding uncouth. This isn't about white people telling Hispanics we really, really do like you. It's not. This is about conservatives having a conversation with conservatives at that level, the level of respect, as equals, that you want to earn their vote and that you want to listen to what their interests are, what their concerns are. That should be your perspective. Show up, listen, and engage. Jose Malaya, who's my national field director, who was the campaign manager for Marco Rubio in his Senate run, says, they're not going to hurt you. So at the LIBRE Initiative, we're committed to the long-term fight. We are 35 full-time employees. We'll be at 45 by the end of the year. We're in 8 states, like I mentioned. We're in Florida, Virginia, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, and California. We'll be in Wisconsin and North Carolina, and hopefully sometime soon in Georgia. And I want to work with every one of you in this room to make sure that we engage with the Hispanic community, that we tell our story, that we drive the principles of the free market, of sound money supply, of limited government, of free enterprise, free trade, risk-taking, individualism, that we celebrate the entrepreneur. Those are the true heroes of our economy. The entrepreneur who risks it all. But let's talk also not only about the job creator, but let's talk about the job holder and how they're impacted. There's 12 job holders to every one job creator. So sometimes as conservatives, we make that mistake that all we talk about is the job creator, the job creator. Well, the middle class is hurting. We need to have that conversation as well. So we're working to make the U.S. Hispanic community a vanguard in the protection of our liberties and our freedoms, and we're having success doing it. And we hope that you will join us in that fight. Thank you so much.